The storm hit Ardiva like it had a grudge. It came from the North Shelf, where the two cold oceans met and fought each other all year long. Nora had seen the warning on her screen that morning, a wide orange band creeping toward her grid. She had 4 hours before it landed. She used 3 of them finishing her soil samples, because that was the kind of person she was. By the time the wind started pulling at the roof panels, she was already outside securing the sensor lines. The sky had gone the color of a bruise. Rain came sideways, sharp enough to sting through her jacket. Her boots sank into the mud with each step, and she had to yank them free like the ground was trying to keep her. She almost missed him. She was tying off the last anchor line near the cluster of thermal vents at the edge of the station's perimeter when she saw a movement. Low to the ground, something tucked against the base of the largest vent, pressed flat into the mud, so still she thought it was debris at first. Then it shivered. She moved closer, crouching, squinting through the rain. The creature was small, no bigger than a large dog, with wings folded tight against its sides and a tail curled around its own body for warmth. Its scales were pale gold, the color of old honey, and several of them along the left wing were bent and torn, exposing raw skin beneath. Its eyes were open, but not tracking. Glassy, the kind of look she had seen once in a man with severe cold exposure. On a different storm, on a different bad day, she tried not to think about. She knew exactly what it was. A Varith hatchling. A baby dragon. Every protocol she had been trained on said the same thing. Do not approach unclaimed alien young. Do not make contact. Signal the nearest Varith relay and wait for a response team. Nora looked at the hatchling, looked at the sky, looked at her comm unit, which was already showing 1 bar and dropping. She pulled off her field thermal blanket, the big one she kept rolled on her belt for emergencies, and wrapped it around the hatchling in 2 fast, firm motions. He made no sound. No fight. His whole body trembled under her hands like a motor running wrong. She picked him up and carried him inside. He weighed less than she expected. That worried her more than anything else. Inside, she set him on her bunk and began working quickly. She was a xenobiologist, not a doctor, but she had field med training and she had read enough on Varith physiology to know the basics. The hearthstone, the internal organ that kept them warm from the inside, could fail if exposed to severe cold long enough. She had no way to check it directly, but she could treat the external damage, get him dry, get the ambient temperature up, and give his body a fighting chance. She cleaned the torn wing membrane with saline, laid surgical mesh across the open patches, and sealed the edges with bonding gel. He let her do it. He did not pull away. He watched her hands move with those dull, distant eyes, and every so often his whole frame shuddered, and she had to pause and wait for it to pass. She tried the long-range comm twice. Static. The storm had taken it out completely. When she had done everything she could do, she sat on the edge of the bunk beside him and pulled the thermal blanket tighter around his shoulders. He was still cold. She could feel it through the material. She turned the bunk heater to its highest setting and sat close and waited. It was then, while the rain hammered the roof and the wind pressed against the walls, that she felt it. A faint pressure behind her eyes. Not pain. More like someone standing just outside a closed door and breathing slowly. Something at the edge of her mind, soft and uncertain, like a question asked in a language she did not speak. She looked at the hatchling. His eyes had focused. He was watching her. She did not know what telepathy felt like. She had read descriptions of it. None of them came close to this. It was not a voice, and it was not an image. It was a feeling, shapeless and small, like cupped hands around a match in the wind. She said, quietly, "I've got you." She did not know if he understood the words. But she said it again anyway, the same way she used to talk her crew through the bad moments. Low and steady, not pretending things were fine, just making sure her voice was there in the dark. He did not move away from her. By the time the worst of the storm settled into a dull roar, the hatchling had stopped shivering. He was still pale. His scales had not warmed to their full color yet, but the glassy look had gone from his eyes, and he was breathing in slow, even pulls. Nora sat beside him in the small lit space of her station, rain pressing at every wall, and did not think about protocols or relay signals or the report she would eventually have to write. She just sat there, keeping watch, the way she should have done once before and hadn't. She was not going to make that mistake again. By the second day, the hatchling had a name. Nora had not planned to give him one. It just happened the way most things in her life happened, quietly, without announcement, and then all at once. She had been noting his behaviors in her field log, writing the hatchling, each time until the repetition started to feel wrong, like calling a person the patient. So she wrote Soren, and it stuck, and she did not explain it to anyone because there was no one to explain it to. The storm had not let up. If anything, it had gotten more settled, the kind of bad weather that makes itself at home. The comm unit stayed at 0 bars. The satellite uplink ran a retry loop every 10 minutes, and failed every time. Nora had 2 days of supplies she had not planned to use this fast, and one very small dragon slowly warming up on her bunk. His scales had changed overnight. When she had first brought him in, they were pale and flat, almost gray at the edges. Now they held a faint amber light, like sunlight through amber glass. That was the Hearthstone waking back up. She noted it carefully, took her temperature readings, and let herself feel relieved. He watched everything she did. When she moved to her work table, his eyes followed. When she opened a sample container, his head tilted. When she dropped her stylus and muttered something under her breath, he made a short clicking sound that she decided to take as sympathy. She started talking to him the way she talked to herself on long fieldwork days. Out loud, steady, not expecting answers. She explained what she was looking at on her screens. She described the storm patterns. She told him the history of Ardiva's northern shelf in about 4 minutes, because that was genuinely all there was to say about it. He did not understand the words. She knew that, but she watched his body respond to the tone. When her voice was flat and tired, his tail curled tighter. When she spoke with more energy, his wings shifted slightly, lifting at the base. He was reading something underneath the language. Frequency, maybe. Emotion moving through sound. On the afternoon of the second day, she rigged a perch for him beside her workstation, a rolled equipment case topped with her spare insulation padding. She lifted him over, slowly, giving him time to object. He did not object. He stepped onto the perch and sat tall, watching her screen with an expression that she could only describe as professional interest. She set a deactivated sample scanner near his front feet. He sniffed it, poked it with one small claw, looked at her, poked it again harder, and it slid off the edge and clattered to the floor. He froze, startled by the noise. Nora laughed. She could not help it. It came out fast and genuine, the first real laugh she'd had in longer than she wanted to count. He startled again at the sound of it, wings flaring slightly, and then his chest made a rapid clicking rhythm that she recognized, after a moment, as something like laughter too. She picked up the scanner and put it back. He knocked it off again immediately. That night, she folded her old field jacket into a nest shape at the foot of her bunk and settled him into it. He turned in a slow circle, testing it, then curled into the center with his tail over his nose. She turned the light down. Then the image came. It was not like seeing a picture. It was more like suddenly remembering something, a memory that was not hers. Warmth, orange light, moving and alive. A cluster of other small shapes pressed close together, smooth scales against smooth scales. Something large nearby, steady and safe, with wings spread wide overhead. The smell of heat and stone. She understood, without being told, that she was seeing his home, his family. The memory shifted. The warmth dropped away. Cold came. Wind. Rain. The other shapes disappeared. Then darkness and mud, and a sound like the world coming apart. Then she was back in her own station, sitting on the edge of her bunk in the low light. Soren had lifted his head. His eyes were on her. His scales had dimmed, the amber gone soft and gray at the edges again. She moved to him without thinking. She sat beside the jacket nest and placed one hand gently against his side, just behind his folded wing, where the warmth of his hearthstone came through the scales. "I know," she said. "I know you miss them." She did not say it would be fine. She did not know if it would be fine. She had learned, 2 years ago on a night she still dreamed about, that saying that to people only made them distrust you later. Instead, she just kept her hand there, steady and warm, while the storm pressed against the walls and the comm unit ran its quiet failed loop. His scales warmed slowly back to amber under her palm. She did not move until he fell asleep. In her field log that night, she wrote 3 lines under Soren's behavioral notes. Hearthstone function improving. Wing membrane repair holding. Subject appears responsive to human physical contact and vocal pattern. Initiating mild telepathic communication, Emotional image transfer only. No threat behavior observed. She paused. Then she added one more line, which was not scientific at all. He knocked the scanner off the table twice on purpose. I'm almost certain of it. The storm broke on the third morning like a fist unclenching. The sky over Ardiva went from dark green to pale gray to something close to white, and the wind dropped so fast Nora's ears popped. She stood in the open doorway of the station, boots at the edge of the mud, and watched the clouds split apart. Soren sat on her shoulder. He had decided that morning that her shoulder was acceptable furniture, and watched with her. The comm unit found a signal 14 minutes later. She filed her emergency broadcast immediately, the standard one, flagging it to all Verith relay frequencies as the protocol required. Then she sent a separate message to her own command post at the colonial grid, informing Commander Issel of the situation in plain language. She included her field notes, her med logs, and the repair documentation for Soren's wing. Issel's response came back in under an hour. Hail. Sit tight. Do not make this complicated. She read it twice. She was not sure what he thought she was doing that was complicated. She had found an injured infant in a storm and given it medical care. That seemed straightforward to her. The Verith patrol vessel broke atmosphere before noon. It came down fast and without signal, the way Verith ships always moved, like they had no interest in being watched. It landed on the hard ground north of her station, far enough to avoid the mud, and 3 Verith stepped out. The first 2 were large adults in the pale body armor the Verith used for formal operations. Cold-faced, still, watching everything. The third was younger, smaller for a Verith, which still made him twice Nora's height. He moved differently than the other 2, more carefully, like he was trying to take up less space than he owned. He was the translator. Oru. She could tell before he spoke. Behind all 3, barely visible in the vessel's doorway, stood the 4th. Elder Draft. She had seen images of Senior Verith in briefing files. She was not fully prepared for the reality. He was enormous, and old in a way that read in every line of his body. Wings that had seen weather, scales the deep blue-green of a mountain lake in winter, and eyes that looked at everything as if taking inventory. He did not come down to the mud. He watched from the door. Oru reached her first. He spoke Verith, then caught himself and switched to the Accord common tongue, accented but careful. The hatchling is Soren, clutch of Elder Draft. He is to be returned immediately. We thank you for the signal. No one used the word rescue. She noted that. The 2 armored adults moved past her into the station without asking. She stepped aside. She heard Soren make a sharp clicking sound from somewhere inside. Ori looked at her. There was something in his expression she could not fully name. Not quite apology, not quite discomfort, but something sitting between the 2. Are his injuries treated? He asked quietly. Wing membrane is repaired. Hearthstone function is back to what I'd estimate is normal range. He should be checked by a Verith healer when you get back, but he's stable. Oru translated this back toward the vessel. Elder Draft said something. Oru did not translate it. Soren appeared in the doorway of the station, 1 armored Verith close behind him. He stopped when he saw the vessel. He looked at the Elder in the doorway. Then he turned his head and looked back at Nora, standing in the mud. He did not move. The armored Verith behind him gave a short sound. A command, she guessed. Soren's tail tucked in. He still did not move. Elder Draft spoke again. His voice was low and even, like stones settling. Soren's ears flattened. Nora crouched down, right there in the mud. She dropped to one knee so she was closer to his eye level, and she looked at him the way she had looked at him for 3 days, straight on, no flinching. Hey, she said. It's okay. It's time to go home. She said it in a steady voice, the same voice she had used in the dark during the storm. She kept her face calm. She made herself breathe slowly. If he could read emotion through sound, then she was going to give him the right one, even if she had to work for it. He read her anyway. His eyes stayed on hers for a long moment, and she felt that soft pressure behind her temples again, a brush of feeling, quick and complicated, too fast to hold. Then he crossed the mud to her. He pressed his snout to her forehead. He held it there for 3 seconds. Then he walked to his grandfather's vessel without looking back. She stood up, mud on her knee. She watched the door close. Elder Draft had not moved from the entrance the whole time. He looked at her now, one long, unreadable look. And then he was gone and the door sealed behind him. Oru was the last one to the vessel. He stopped beside her. "The gesture he gave you," he said quietly. "The snout to the forehead. It is a farewell that hatchlings give to kin." He did not say anything else. He walked to the vessel, and it lifted without another word from anyone. Nora stood in the clearing mud and watched it go. Then she went inside and sat down in front of her comm unit and stared at the blank screen for a long time before she filed any report at all. 3 weeks after the retrieval, a message arrived on Nora's comm unit with a header she had never seen before. It was not from Colonial Command. It was not from ISIL. It carried the seal of the Vareth Elder Council, a sigil she recognized from her xenobiology briefings, where it appeared mostly in the Do Not Contact, Do Not Approach sections. The message was 7 words long. "Your presence is required. Liaison Oru will collect you." ISIL called her 40 minutes later. She could tell from his voice that he had already seen it. "Hale, what did you do?" "I treated an injured infant in a storm, sir. That's what I told my supervisor." He didn't look reassured. "Do you know how many times a human has been summoned directly by the Vareth Elder Council?" She waited. "0, he said. "The answer is 0. Don't make this into a thing." She did not promise anything. Oru arrived the next morning in a single-seat diplomatic runner, small and fast, built for shuttle work. He was quieter than the last time she had seen him. Less nervous, she thought, but more serious. Like he had been thinking hard about something for 3 weeks and had not quite finished. They flew north for 2 hours. The Vareth regional seat was built into a mountain shelf, cut from the natural stone, enormous in the way that things built for 15-meter wingspans tended to be. The entrance alone was 3 times the height of Nora's entire station. She walked in wearing her field coat. She had thought about wearing something else. Then she decided that she was a field researcher and she would walk in as a field researcher, and if the Vareth Council wanted her to be something different, they should have given more than 1 day's notice. The council hall was cold and dark and full of stone columns, so wide she could not have put her arms around them. 12 Vareth elders sat in a high arc, 12 of the oldest beings on our diva. At the center of the arc, Elder Draff. Oru stood beside her. He did not translate as she entered. He simply stood there, which she found oddly steadying. Draff spoke. Long, slow Vareth syllables that rolled through the stone hall like the storm had rolled through her walls. Oru listened until he finished, then translated in a low voice. He says, "The hatchling Soren returned to this family and shared his memory. Among the Vareth, there is no private experience of a hatchling. All they live, they carry back to the family bond. Every elder in this hall has experienced what Soren experienced during the 3 days he spent in your care." She thought about what that meant. She thought about the surgical mesh on his wing, the jacket nest, the dropped scanner, the dark and the storm in her hand against his side while he fell asleep. She thought about every unguarded moment she had not known was being recorded. Drav spoke again. Oru translated. He says, "There is a thing the council cannot explain. You are a creature with no ancestral memory. Your lifespan is shorter than the adolescence of a Vareth. You have no telepathy, no shared bond, no obligation of any kind to the hatchling. And yet the memory Soren carried back was not the memory of a caretaker. It was the memory of something the council has no external category for." Drav looked at her directly. He said one more thing. Oru was quiet for a moment before he translated. He asks, "How does a creature with nothing promised to it love that completely, that fast, with that much certainty?" The hall was entirely still. 12 ancient beings waiting. Nora looked at the floor for a moment. Not because she was nervous, but because she was actually thinking about it. She wanted to give a real answer, not the first thing that came out. Then she looked up at Draff. "Because we don't have time not to," she said. She did not explain it. It did not feel like something that needed more words. Oru translated. The hall stayed silent. But the quality of the silence changed, the way a room changes when something lands in it, and everyone is deciding what it means. Drav was still for a long time. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the mud outside her station, like he was taking inventory, like he was looking for something and had not yet decided if he had found it. Then he spoke a final time. Short. Flat. Oru translated very carefully. He says, "Your name will be entered into the Vareth record of Soren's life events. This record is kept from hatching to death. You will be the first non-Vareth to appear in one." The session ended. The elders rose. Most left without looking at her. Drav paused at the far door. He did not turn. He said one word over his shoulder in the accord common tongue. Just one, accented and deliberate. The word was noted. Then he was gone. Oru walked her back to the runner in silence. When they reached it, she asked him what noted meant in context. He thought about it carefully. I think, he said, it means he does not have a category for you yet. But he has decided to keep looking. She climbed into the runner. Outside, the Ardiva Mountains caught the last of the afternoon light and held it in the stone, orange and warm and very old. She thought that was, possibly, enough. The leak came from inside the Varith Council. Nora found out about it the same way she found out about most things that happened in the political world, through Issel, who called her at an unreasonable hour with a voice that meant he had not slept. A younger Varith Council member, named Bale, had released details of the summons to the Public Information Network. The account he released was accurate in its facts and dishonest in its framing. It described the elders spending formal council time on a single human settler, questioning her about her emotional responses, and entering her name into the sacred record of a Varith bloodline. The framing made it sound like a failure of Varith dignity, like something embarrassing that should have stayed quiet. The response on the Varith public channels was fast and loud. Nora read the translated posts with her morning ration. The words human sentiment appeared a lot, usually next to words that meant something between contamination and distraction. A trade delegation canceled a meeting with colonial government. 3 Varith academic exchanges that had been tentatively scheduled were quietly withdrawn. On the human side, Issel called her again that afternoon. I need you to release a statement, he said. Something simple. You assisted a lost hatchling in a storm. You're glad he recovered. You respect the Varith Council's time and processes. 2 sentences. Clean. Diplomatic. That's all true, Nora said. Good. Send it. She looked at the draft she had written. She read it over twice. It was accurate. It was diplomatic. It said nothing that was false. And it was shaped, very carefully, to make it sound like she had done something small and procedural. Like she had filed a lost and found report. She did not send it. That night, Oru contacted her through the private diplomatic runner channel they had used during her visit to the council seat. He was brief and careful in the way she had learned meant he was being monitored. I have a message from the family. Not official. Personal. He told her that Soren had been recreating a specific memory in the family bond every evening. The same image every night. A small station in a storm. A warm blanket. Hands that worked quickly without hurting. A voice in the dark. He told her that Drav had not blocked the memory from being shared. He had said nothing about it. He also told her that Bale's faction was using her silence as evidence that even she knew the interaction had been inappropriate. That she was keeping her head down because she understood she had overstepped. Nora sat with that for a long time. Then she wrote a message addressed to the Varith family channel. Not to the council. Not to public information networks. Just to the family bond address that Oru gave her, which was a private channel used only for personal communication between family members and those they had designated. She was not a designated contact. She sent it anyway. It was short. Soren, I think about you too. The surgical mesh should have fully dissolved by now. Your wing is your own again. Use it well. Stay warm, little one. She sent it and set her comm unit down and went back to her soil samples. Bale's faction found out within a day. The message was leaked, stripped of its private channel context, and posted publicly as evidence of exactly what Bale had been saying. Human interference in a Varith family bond. Emotional manipulation. A settler who did not know her place reaching into sacred Varith family space as if she belonged there. Issel's call was not pleasant. He used words like borderline insubordinate and diplomatic incident, and hail, I am running out of ways to protect you. Nora let him finish. Then she said, quietly, he's 3 years old, sir. He's been showing his family the same memory every night for 3 weeks. I sent him 4 sentences. Silence on the line. File the reprimand, she said. I'll sign it. She did sign it, when it came. She signed it, noted the date, and went back to her field work. What she did not know, what Oru told her later, quietly, much later, was that Elder Drav had read her message before it was leaked. He had read it in the family channel, the way family read one another's communications. He had not told anyone what he thought of it. But he had not blocked her channel access either. Bale stood in the council chamber 3 days after the leak and made his case. He spoke about Varith identity, about the sacred nature of the family bond, about the slow erosion of what made the Varith who they were. He was articulate. He was not entirely wrong about some of it. He called for the removal of Nora's name from Soren's record. Drav let him finish. Then Drav said one thing. Oru translated it for Nora later from the public session record. Drav had said, "The record captures what was true. What was true does not require our comfort." The motion failed. Nora read the translation sitting in the mud outside her station, checking her sensor lines after a small weather event. The sky was clear. Our diva had a particular kind of evening light that came through the cloud breaks in long flat lines across the ground. She sat in it for a while before going back inside. She thought about a small warm weight on her shoulder, about amber scales in the low light of her bunk lamp, about a sound like laughter when a scanner hit the floor. She thought, some things you do not explain. You just do them, and you let them be true. Then she went inside and wrote up her field notes like any other day. 6 months is not a long time for most things on our diva. For Soren, it was enough to grow a wingspan of 3 meters and completely ruin the scale of Nora's memory of him. She saw him from a distance first, crossing the open ground toward her station alongside Elder Drav. She had been expecting Drav. He had sent a formal request for a meeting through proper channels with 12 hours of notice. The message had been short and official. What it had not mentioned was that he was bringing a half-grown dragon who was now the size of a small vehicle and moving with the particular energy of a young creature, trying very hard to look like he was walking casually. He was not walking casually. He spotted her at about 200 meters, and his wings came up. Drav said something sharp. The wings folded down. Soren kept walking fast. She stood outside her station door and waited. When he reached her, he stopped and sat very tall and made the clicking sound, the same rhythm she remembered, faster now, bigger. It filled more air than it used to. His scales had deepened from pale amber to a strong honey gold, warm all the way to the tips. The left wing, the one she had patched with surgical mesh in the middle of a storm, was full and clean, every membrane intact. She put her hand against his snout. He pressed into it, hard enough to push her back a step. "Yeah," she said. "I missed you too." Drav reached them. He stood at his full height and looked at this, and she waited for the cold inventory look she remembered. It came. He was still himself, but there was something different underneath it, something she could not name yet. He spoke, not in Varith, in the Accord common tongue, slow and deliberate, with an accent like grinding stone. "I have been studying your people," he said. She had not known he spoke it. She kept her face even. "I wanted to understand the answer you gave the council," he continued. He moved each word carefully, the way a person moves through unfamiliar ground. "Because we don't have time not to. I have read your historical archives. Many of them. Your people are extensive record keepers." "We are," she agreed. "I found evidence of this everywhere," he said. "The same pattern. Humans taking in the young of other species. Humans building shelter in places with no shelter. Humans returning to dangerous places for the wounded, even when leaving would be the survivable choice." He paused. "I cannot find the logic calculation behind it. I have tried." "There isn't one," she said. He looked at her steadily. "No. I concluded the same." He reached into the carrying panel on his armor and brought out a thin stone tablet, dark, inscribed with Varith script she could not read. He held it out. "In our tradition, there is a designation. Varek. It means one who shelters without obligation. It is held by those who protect a clutch alone against storm or threat. It is not an honor we have given outside our own people. Ever." She looked at the tablet. "The council voted," Drav said. 7-5. "You should know it was not without argument." 7-5 is still a majority, she said. Something moved across his face. "A very small thing." "It is," he said. She took the tablet. It was heavier than it looked. She turned it over carefully. Then Soren, who had been sitting behind his grandfather being very patient for approximately as long as he was capable of being patient, moved. He stepped around Drav, spread his wings fully, 3 meters of honey gold membrane catching the flat afternoon light of our diva, and draped one wing over Nora's shoulders. It was enormous. It was warm. The weight of it came down gentle and deliberate, settled around her like the field jacket she had once folded into a nest. He had learned it from her. He had been carrying the memory of a blanket and a storm and a human who had not thought twice about the warmth she gave away. For 6 months he had been carrying it, and when he was big enough to return it, he had. Nora stood very still under the wing. The warmth of his hearthstone radiated through the membrane. Around her, our diva was cold and pale and going gold at the edges as the light changed. She laughed. It came out the same way it always did. Fast, unplanned, completely genuine. Drav watched this. He stood without moving, arms at his sides, expression doing something complicated. Nora looked at him over the edge of Soren's wing, still laughing, because she could not stop and she had stopped trying. Drav made a sound. It was low and rough, like a stone dropped in a deep well. It was over in 2 seconds. She was not certain she had heard it right. Oru later confirmed, when she described it, that she had heard it right. He said that sound was the elder equivalent of a laugh. He also said he had worked alongside Elder Drav for 9 years and had never heard it before. She stayed under Soren's wing for a long time. She held the stone tablet in both hands and felt his warmth through the membrane and looked at the sky over our diva, which was doing something beautiful without being asked. Later she would send Issel a brief message about the Varric designation, which would cause a significant amount of administrative excitement. Later there would be new talks between the Colonial Grid and the Varith Council, and they would go better than any talks before them, and people who studied such things would write long papers about why. But that was later. Right now there was just this. A human woman standing under a dragon's wing on a cold world at the edge of the Accord, holding a stone tablet with her name on it in a language she could not read, listening to an ancient elder try to remember how to laugh. It was enough. It was, she thought, more than enough. It was the whole thing.